Kashmiris too are human, humans without rights, in a land of idyllic beauty and excellent delights. What this land has come to rends my heart in two, each thought shrouded in a tear. Kashmir is crying in each ear. Kashmir is crying in each ear.
Perfection beyond this world makes Kashmir a paradise. The land of sparkling rivers and sleepy lakes, of startling gardens and regal chinar trees. Kashmir boasts some of the most beautiful flowering meadows and snow-capped peaks. The abundance of natural beauty has earned the valley the nickname Switzerland of the East. The conflict in Kashmir dates to the partition of India in 1947. The state of Jammu and Kashmir was at this time majority Muslim but with a Hindu ruler, and it was unclear whether it would accede to Pakistan or India. Its eventual accession to India became a matter of dispute between the two countries, with both India and Pakistan claiming ownership of Kashmir. After a brief war in 1947 to 48, Kashmir was divided between Pakistan and India administered territories. A ceasefire line was agreed under UN supervision, which has since been renamed the Line of Control. Kashmir continues to remain a challenge for those who seek peace, tranquility and justice for Kashmir. In the part of Kashmir which has remained turbulent for the last 16 years, which is run by the Indian administration, there remains a wanton denial of the most basic right, the right to life. Human rights of the people of Jammu and Kashmir continue to remain in a state of suspension, and most of their fundamental freedoms stand curbed. Violation of the right to life, torture, rape, custodial death and degrading treatment. The fake encounters are rampant. Draconian laws give license to shoot and kill. Invade privacy continue to remain in position. There are voices in the Indian civil society who have spoken for the rights of Kashmiris, and one such voice is the writer, author, book prize winner and activist Arundhati Roy. Recently, whilst on a visit to the UK, she spoke on the Kashmiri situation.
Not ever been really a part of India, which is why it's ridiculous for the Indian government to keep saying it's an integral part of India. India today has 500,000 troops manning that little valley. It's the highest, most militarized zone in the world. India has done everything wrong there. Apart from a military occupation, it has completely rigged elections. It has changed that valley into a little sort of puddle, a little pool of spies and informers and intelligence networks and torture chambers. And today, you know, it's come to a stage where people have just had enough. people from outside need to look at that issue very carefully and stop looking at India as if, oh, it's just this market where we can, it's a good financial destination, so let it do what it wants in Kashmir. Because the whole thing is going to unravel. So I do think that even the Americans need to look into Kashmir and talk about it, since they are involved in creating this cesspool there now, to create the space for them to be able to say what they want, because this is a whole population that is living in the most insufferable conditions.
Sandra Jordan travelled to Kashmir on a fact-finding mission and prepared a documentary, The Unreported World. Her observations and story of her journey should be heard.
500,000 Indian troops and police are here to crush a 15-year rebellion and keep the Muslim population Indian. Excuse me, sir, could I speak to you about your officer who beat these women? Excuse me, there she is, this woman here. She blames the military for shooting her husband. She said every day her child asks, when is his father coming home? He just went out to work, and now their lives have been ruined. What do you think about what's just happened here? A curious story began to unfold. But he says he doesn't think that the militants were killed in the house. He thinks they were brought from somewhere. The family is really shocked. They said that they told the family to go into this house, into the room, and they shut the curtains and said, shut the door. And half an hour later, the security forces arrived in a car, and the family here said they brought the two militants with them. The militants were not hiding in the house. They'd never seen them. And then they staged a fake encounter, put the men in there in that room, and they all fired at them for 3 hours and staged this encounter. This must be where they were killed, I think, because there's so much blood in here. Torture by Indian security forces is routine in Kashmir to gain information and to intimidate the population. Javed is another young man held in the crackdown, accused of hiding a pistol for militants. He said all his clothes were removed and he was tied to a table.
He's my father.
How did they treat you when they came in? Were they violent towards you?
They destroy everything, and in front of us they beat my father with gun and cock gun in front of him and say, we will kill you. We were here and we don't know where is my father and where is my mother. Tell us where is my mother and father.
Peace is in the headlines, but here Azadi, freedom, was the word in everyone's mouth.
In their recently published report, Lawless Law, Amnesty stated, Amnesty International opposes on principle all systems of administrative detention. The Indian Supreme Court has also described the system of administrative detention as lawless law, largely supplanting the regular criminal justice system. In JK, criminal justice systems have developed procedure, rules of evidence, and the burden of standard of proof in order to minimize the risk of punishing the innocent and to ensure punishment of the guilty. It is unacceptable for any government to circumvent these safeguards by use of preventative or any other form of administrative detention, punishing those suspected of committing offences without ever charging or trying them. In a public statement published on the 4th of April 2008, Amnesty International had said, Amnesty International urges the Government of India to launch urgent investigations into hundreds of unidentified graves discovered since 2006 in Jammu and Kashmir. The investigation must be independent, impartial, and follow international standards. The grave sites are believed to contain the remains of victims of unlawful killings, enforced disappearances, torture, and other abuses which occurred in the context of armed conflict persisting in the state since 1989. The graves of at least 940 persons have reportedly been found in 18 villages in Uri district alone. The political social psychologist Ashish Nandi wrote in a column in Outlook, "Psychologically speaking, the Kashmiris are already outside India and will remain there for at least 2 generations. The random killing, rapes, torture and the other atrocities have brutalized their society and turned them into a traumatized people." Violent activism by Delhi-based psychologist Shobna Sonpa is a clinical study of men who walk the violent talk to achieve their goals. Shobna's depiction of what goes on in the valley makes Kashmir our own Abu Ghraib, where torture and humiliation of young men labelled as militants is nothing out of the ordinary. Dr. Anjana Chatterjee, convener of International People's Tribunal, who has documented 2,700 unknown, unmarked mass graves containing more than 2,943 bodies across 55 villages in Bandipora, Baramulla and Kupwara districts of Kashmir.
The construction of the canal, but what they suspect, and we have to verify, is that there was a layer of bodies already on which this rubble was poured. And across this area, right there, is the village, and that's the village where Atta Muhammad lives, who's the grave digger for these graves.
These graves include bodies of extrajudicial, summary and arbitrary executions, as well as massacres committed by the Indian military and paramilitary forces. The report buried evidence by the International People's Tribunal on Human Rights and Justice in India-administered Kashmir has said in the beginning of their report, the Indian state's governance of India-administered Kashmir requires the use of discipline and death as techniques of social control. The structure of governance affiliated with militarization in Kashmir necessitates dispersed and intense forms of psychosocial regulation. As an established nation state, India's objective has been to discipline and assimilate Kashmir into its territory. To do so has required the domestication of Kashmiri peoples through the selected use of discipline and death as regulatory mechanisms. Discipline is effected through military presence, surveillance, punishment and fear. Death is dispersed through extrajudicial means and those authorized by law. Psychosocial control is exercised through the use of death, deception, to discipline the living. Discipline rewards forgetting, isolation and depoliticization. there is a need of awakening the international conscience. Closing of the eyes and ears by the international community on the massive human rights violations in Kashmir by Indian security forces would not end the issue. Rather, the seething protest against Indian human rights violation would endanger world peace.